Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? This ain't murder three. Strange things did happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. Coffee makes the world go round, and around here we have the Organic Man Coffee Trike, 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. If you're not looking for coffee, try their tea. It's the best in town. And remember, life is too short to drink bad coffee. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. This is the 150th show I've done, which is surprising since when I first started out, I thought I might do 6 and that would be about it. So tonight, what I'm going to do is I was interviewed on the Cryptid Connection. So instead of doing 2 podcasts this week, I thought I would just record the interview and play it as the show. So here I am being interviewed by Steve and Jennifer James on the Cryptid Connection. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hi, everybody. This is Stephen and Jennifer. And welcome to Cryptid Connection. With us, we've got Chris James. And Chris James is the host of the Strange Matters podcast.
Strange
How are you doing, Chris?
Strange things.
Did I say strange? Oh, I did. Oh, my God.
That
was my first edit.
You're thinking of Art Bell with Dark Matter.
Yeah.
That very well may be. And which is really bad because I haven't listened to that podcast in years. But I've been listening to yours for about a year now religiously.
Oh, that's good.
So, I'm one of those 3 people, you know.
My fan club.
Here we are. You've always wanted to know where we were. We're here.
So we're with Chris James, Strange Things tonight. How are you doing, Chris?
Pretty good. This weather's about to drive me nuts. It's cold in the morning, and then it's hot in the afternoon, and then it's cold again in the evening. But, hey, that's Texas.
It's Texas, but lately here, I think everybody in Texas has had far too many sick days because this weather sure makes your allergies act up or you get a cold.
That's the trouble with being retired. There's no sick leave.
That is true.
It's my own time.
I'm self-employed. I kind of understand where you're coming from. Jennifer, however, punches a clock. She's a slave.
I'm a wage slave of
Yep.
sorts. I get yelled at if I get out sick too much. And, you know, with a 4-year-old and daycare, it's bound to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Tell me something. I want you to go ahead and talk about the book that you just did.
Already?
Let's hear about it. Can you tell us a little bit?
It's a whole bizarre story that really started back in 1990. And I don't know if you want to know the whole background story or just the fact that it was a bizarre occurrence that happened. Paranormal, pretty much.
Let's go ahead and I think let's hear it because it will help people get to know you. Because honestly, we're going to get a different side from you than what you normally put on the podcast. And so I'd rather go ahead and just hear your story out of your own mouth for right now, if you don't mind. And if we have any questions, we'll ask.
You'll probably have a lot of questions by the time I'm done.
Fair enough.
When my class arrived in Laredo, Texas with the United States Border Patrol, there were 36 of us from one class that all went to the same station. There were only 12 journeymen at the station to teach us how to actually do the job. All the nonsense they teach us at the academy, it's the first thing you do is you forget all that, now you learn the real job. But because there were so few journeymen and so many new folks, they would pile like 2 or 3 of us in a vehicle with one guy, and he's supposed to teach us how to do the job. As soon as we got our year of probation in, they started putting 2 of us, 2 trainees together and sending us out to work, not really fully sure what the heck it is we're doing. And one night, I was the semi-senior guy because I had a whole extra month over the guy in the car with me. And it was a midnight shift. The guy in charge wasn't even a supervisor. He was just a senior agent. And he told us, don't get in trouble. Be back here at 8 o'clock in the morning. That was it. He didn't care if we talked to anybody. He didn't care if we even left the parking lot, just as long as we didn't get in trouble. So we take off. We head down south. We're driving along Highway 83. And on the side of the road, up on a little hill that we referred to as the party house, we could see a bonfire. And it attracted our attention because you don't know what could possibly be there. Would smugglers start a giant bonfire? Yes and no, because they knew that by being out in the open like that, it would be less likely for us to go to investigate. So a lot of times they would make these huge dramatic shows of, look, there's nothing going on here, and people would ignore them. Well, we decided to go have a look. And at the time, we used to have a switch on the dashboard that we could throw, and it would kill all the lights in the vehicle. No brake lights, no backup lights, so you could drive into a location and not give away your presence. We go down this long paved road towards the river, and then we turn onto a gravel road. We go down this gravel road back into the trees, and it's one vehicle wide. We get to a corner. We go up a dirt road that goes up on top of this hill, and that's where the fire is. And as we're coming up over the top of that hill, I see 15 to 20 people standing in a circle around the bonfire. They're wearing full-length brown robes, and they have their hands up in the air, and they're chanting. The first thing that entered my mind was a movie called Race with the Devil, 1975, with Peter Fonda and Warren Oates. 2 guys stumble across a group of Satanists in the middle of the night, and then everybody gets killed. And I'm thinking of this as I'm looking at these guys in the brown robes, and they turn and look at us. They didn't look happy to see us. My partner started yelling, "Let's get the heck out of here," which I thought was a really good idea. I threw the vehicle into reverse. Now, keep in mind, I have no reverse lights. I stepped on the gas, and we shot backwards way too fast. I managed to make a 90-degree turn onto the gravel road without being able to see where I was going. I'm torn between looking back over my shoulder or looking forward to see if we're being gained on by these characters. We hit the pavement, go squealing out to the highway as fast as we could go. And by this time, we've kind of started to slow down a bit, started to think, and it's like, what did we just see? Satanists. Did you see any dead bodies? Didn't see any bodies. Who do we tell? Now, the last thing you want is a bad reputation at work, because it will follow you the rest of your career. I did not want to be known as that guy. So between the 2 of us, we decided we're not going to tell anybody. We're just going to keep this a secret.
It never happened, huh?
Went back to the station, checked in. Guy in charge asked if we'd seen anything, and we both said no. And we went home. 20 years later, on Coast to Coast, they used to have Ghost to Ghost on Halloween night. And I thought this would make a really good show. And after 20 years at work, nobody cares what I thought. I was at the point where I could just walk out the door and never come back, and they couldn't say anything about it. I could retire at the drop of a hat, literally. So I'm talking about this occurrence, and I decide I'm going to call Coast to Coast, Ghost to Ghost on Halloween night and tell them my story. So I sent in the story so they could read it and decide if it was airable. They decided it sounded good, so they said, we'll call you Halloween night. Be ready. Then they changed our schedule at work, and I had to work that night. Got home. There was a message on my recorder. They were disappointed that I wasn't there to talk to them, and, well, that didn't make my day. However, Later on, Art Bell had started Spooky Matter, his own radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And for Halloween, he was going to have, did I call it Spooky Matter? It was Dark Matter. His show was called Dark Matter. He was going to have Spooky Matter on Halloween. Sent in my show, only this time it was actually Art Bell who read it, and he liked the story. So along about Halloween night, 20 minutes into the show, I got to talk to Art Bell and tell him this story of woe of running into Satanists on the river. Once the story was out there, once I had said it to the public, probably a couple million people listening in, I still had the story stuck inside my head. It was still playing over and over, kind of like a bad dream that you just can't get rid of. My wife said, "Why don't you write a book about it?" Like, yeah, great. That's going to be like 2 pages. Who wants to read a 2-page book? And she said, well, fill it out a little. Make it into a fictional story, but use that as the beginning. So one day, with nothing better to do, I sat down at a computer and I stared at a blank sheet of paper for about an hour. And then I started writing. And the story, I changed a few things. The main character's a young boy instead of a full-grown man running from Satanists. And he stumbles across a group of Satanists down on the river. And the next thing I know, I'm 200 pages into this thing, and it actually read pretty well. Some people actually said that they liked it. The book was called Ragman. Horror, lots of bloodshed, not a children's story. Well, over the years...
Sounded like it came too easy to write, though.
That's what happens when you spend time in law enforcement. You get a lot of internal horror stories, really. Things you see, people you talk to. Well, after writing several other horror stories, I discovered real quick that people that read horror stories have issues. Not all of them, just 1 or 2. And they want to tell you about it. And some of these people live in a far scarier world than anything I could ever write about. So I decided instead of horror, I wanted to go into humor. So I started writing humorous stories instead. A book called Flying Saucers Attack Walmart was my first shot at it. And some people like it. It's humor with a little science fiction. Well, a friend of mine, Ishmael, had a group called the Laredo Paranormal Research Society. And there are local ghost and UFO investigators. I'd known the man for 30 years. Never told him about ghosts or UFOs because I didn't want him to think I was weird. He never mentioned anything about it to me because he didn't want me to think he was weird. We're both in law enforcement. I run into him at a UFO conference. It's like, okay. So I asked him if the group had ever had their story written, and he said no, but they were looking for somebody who could put it down on paper. And I volunteered. For the next year, I followed the LPRS folks, the Laredo Paranormal Research Society, around. I went on ghost investigations with them. I went on UFO hunts. I listened to audio recordings of ghostly voices. I watched videos over and over until I could play them with my eyes closed. And I managed to get this book written, the LPRS, Laredo Paranormal Research Society. First time it came out was in 2016. And my friend Ishmael had arranged for a book signing event at the local comic book store. We have high reading ability here in Laredo sometimes. Book signing at a comic book store. It worked. While I'm there telling people about the book I'd written, a woman comes up named Maggie, and she tells me that her husband, Arturo, has a radio show and he'd like to interview me on the radio. Well, okay, that sounds interesting. She didn't bother to mention that it was going to be in Spanish. And so Arturo would ask me a question. My wife would translate it because I can speak enough Spanish to get in a fight, but I can't speak enough to get out of one. I would answer the question to my wife. My wife would tell Arturo what I had said. It made for a very long radio interview. Well, Arturo...
But an interesting one, I'm sure.
Arturo decided that, and these are his words, someone in Laredo needs to do a radio show like Coast to Coast. And I told him, great. When you find somebody, let me know, and I'll listen as long as it's in English. And then a little while later, he says, somebody in Laredo should do this radio show, maybe a podcast on strange things. Like, that's great, wonderful, let me know when you find somebody. Finally, he just said, sit down at this desk. He stuck a microphone in my face and told me to record a show. And the very first show I did was on UFOs, because that was how Art Bell had started. His first show was UFOs. Now, I am not likening myself to being anything close to Art Bell. I'm just trying to stumble around in the path that he set out before us. And that is how the podcast Strange Things got started.
Speaking of that, Chris, if I can interject a little bit, what was one of your most favorite shows you've done thus far?
It probably, and I hate to have to name just one name, would be Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot, just because he is such an entertaining person to listen to. You can ask him a question, and then for about the next 20 minutes, he will be telling you all kinds of really interesting, entertaining, hilarious items, because he used to be a school teacher. And he said that he knew that in order to keep his students awake and interesting, he had to entertain them. And so he carried his teaching ability into his Bigfoot research. He's a really great guy to talk to. He's also a very hard guy to get a hold of. But
I've been to a conference where he was one of the guests, and he is very entertaining.
Huntsville, last year.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Actually, it was the year before. It was 2017.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Huntsville. It was at though he was at Huntsville. We were at Jefferson, because it was the first time we ever laid eyes on you. You probably did not even know or recognize us, because I didn't recognize you. It was Jennifer who recognized you, and evidently you and I sat right next to each other at Jefferson in 2017.
Holy cow.
Tables were right against each other, and we were sitting there, and she pointed you out, and I was like, that's who? Who is this? Then that's when I started paying attention to your podcast.
Dang.
Meanwhile, I was on episode 50 or something.
The couple that was sitting at the table with me, the Coopers, they were from just the north side of Dallas, and their daughter started her own blog for a while. I don't think it's still going, but she got so wrapped up in Bigfoot, it was her mother was saying, "Who's this girl? Is that my daughter?" Because she said it was such a change in her personality being at the Bigfoot conference. Like she discovered what she wanted to do for a while. But it is funny to find out that as you go through life, the people that you encounter, not even realizing it, only to find out later that, oh yeah, we were sitting next to each other, as you say. That dinner was really good.
That it was.
Both of them. It was all right.
Both of them, the Italian and the barbecue.
I liked the barbecue. It was the Italian I wasn't entirely too sure about. If I'm remembering right, wasn't that the pizza that had to be rushed in or something? I'm not sure.
I don't recall pizza. Yeah, well, it was so much better than that first dinner we had in Jefferson. How many years ago? 2015, I believe, when they ran out of food.
Oh, really?
Yes. The dinner, you know how you pay extra if you want to have dinner at the end of the show. Yeah. And apparently a lot of people had snuck into the room that hadn't bothered to pay for dinner. So they had food for so many people, and then they had so many extra people eating that hadn't paid, and losing the... Oh, there it is. But, they ran out of food before they ran out of people to feed. And my wife had a whole lot of potato salad and macaroni, and that was it.
Oh, no.
Well, things happen. That's when Craig decided that instead of having dinner that way, they'd move it to the Big Pines Lodge. That way you knew who was there.
Right.
It's an
We're doing. Oh no, I was about to say they're doing something similar at the Huntsville conference this year because they're having it on the. It's a riverboat, and I can't think of its name now. Something Queen. I want to say Bayou Queen or something like that. Anyway, it's on Lake Conroe, but they're having that dinner on Friday night prior to the conference actually happening on Saturday, and so we're going to be on that cruise with that. And so I was really hoping you'd make it to Huntsville, and I know you can't. You're going to be at the UFO conference the week prior. Am I correct? If I remember right?
Yes, the Edinburgh UFO. It's April 6th, and even though the two are not the same weekend, it's just the logistics of getting up there, and it's only 400 miles from here to Huntsville.
We can feel you. Yes. Trust me. We're 300 some odd miles from Huntsville ourselves. I totally, completely understand.
Yeah, one year my wife couldn't get the Friday night off to drive up early for the Jefferson conference. So I had to wait for her to get out of school. Then we jumped in my truck and took off. I think it was already like 6. Drove 500 miles to get there and then could barely stay awake during the conference the next day. I don't like doing that. It was fine when I was younger.
No fun.
The whole idea of these things, you should have fun. It shouldn't be a bunch of work to go to a conference. You should be there to enjoy yourself, which unfortunately sometimes you just can't do.
This is very true. We enjoyed the heck out of ourselves at the Jefferson conference in 17, and then in 18 at the first Huntsville conference. I ran ragged. I was playing guest, or I was playing the host to out of town. I'll call him a personality. He's a. I don't want to name names, and so I'm gonna keep that one quiet. But he had come out from the West Coast, and I was balancing. I was representing the group of local researchers out there in Huntsville, in that area, and we as a group had invited this man out, and everything else. However, that being said, being Bigfoot researchers, or I should say enthusiasts, because we're all, as much as we want to claim researchers, there's no such thing as a real researcher. Anyway, we still had certain things that certain members didn't want to necessarily reveal to him. There were other, there were a whole bunch of issues. And so to keep everybody in the region happy, we were like, okay, we'll show him this. We're not going to show him that, that kind of a thing. And I guess he realized real quick that he was being minded a little bit because it was a chase after that. He had one or two other local friends that were here, and before I know it, we're chasing him through the forest because he's going from one area to another, and we're like, oh, what's he doing? And part of the problem is because, he's out there and he's filming, and that's the thing that was really, scaring everybody, is because the Forest Service out there is so sensitive about any kind of publicity or anything like that. And we just knew it was going to come down on us, and we did not want that to happen. And so, the last Huntsville for me was actually a lot of work and a lot of running around. It was a very unique experience, but it did cap off almost an entire week that we spent out in the woods, and so that was good.
It's unfortunately that is the nature of the beast. Anytime you have a group of people, you're going to have a group of ideas, and even if one person's in charge, there's always going to be, oh, no, we need to do it this way, we need to do it that way. And then you get other issues, and it can always be a problem.
Yeah, and it's really just, it's not so much that we have any one person that was in charge or anything like that. We were just trying to respect each other's wishes.
Yeah.
You've got some people that have been out there researching for years. You had other ones that were fairly new.
Don't step on anybody.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And and we've got certain areas Those are the old timers. We let them have them. You know, we've got these over here. These are for the new guys, and then the rest of this is for all of the rest of us, kind of a thing. And especially with Sam Houston out there at Huntsville, there are certain areas that are publicly known and publicly acknowledged, and they're so overrun now by anyone coming in. And then we have other areas that, honestly, we're trying not to talk about.
Yes.
And a lot of people get bent out of shape by that. And we have several members that I guess you could say, honestly, they honestly are concerned for safety, for people's safety to go out in these particular parts. And it's not necessarily just a Bigfoot thing. We've got, smugglers going out there. You've got human trafficking. You know, there are meth labs that are getting out there. And
poachers that don't want to be discovered.
Yeah, not to mention the poachers. And you know, and people, you know, Squatchers is going out there, and they're going to go, oh yeah, well, they don't know that a month ago a meth lab got busted right out there, you know, or something like that, and you don't know what the neighborhood is.
Yes.
Because especially in Sam Houston, it is one of those little, or rather one of those forests that weren't naturally a forest when it was created. It had already been parceled up into various farms and things like that. And so the forest is actually existing around these islands of private property. And it's very easy to cross boundary lines without knowing it. And so you can be out there, and if you miss a little mark, next thing you know, you're on someone's private property, and you may not like what they're doing.
Yes.
And they certainly may not like you there.
Then you've got the wild hogs and other creatures out there that don't like humans, or they like humans a little too much.
That's just the spice of life.
See, the last time that we were out there, the most dangerous thing we ran into was actually a pack of wild dogs.
Yes.
They kept interfering. They were living in our camp area, apparently, and we were in their territory. They didn't like that.
Yeah, they did not appreciate us in that particular hunter's camp at that time.
Yikes.
And it's not exactly something you can just sit there and pop a couple shots off. You know, you got to use a level head, and so discretion was the better side of valor in that situation.
Oh, yes. I was mentioning my book, the LPRS. When I first wrote it, I told the gang that it would be a dynamic book. In other words, if somebody joined the group later on, I could add them simply enough. Since it's self-published, I don't have to get somebody's permission to change a chapter, to add or to subtract. And so we had several people come in who had really good, interesting stories, and so it's like, I'm going to add you, I'm going to add you, I'm going to edit the thing. So I took the book and I re-edited the whole story, sent it off to the publisher. It looked good on my computer. Get the books back, and I run down to Edinburgh UFO conference, and I started selling my books to people. I only sell them for $10 a piece because I am no Hemingway. Something happened. I don't remember what it was, but I'm thumbing through the book, looking for something, a picture to show someone, and I start noticing that some of the content has lines through it. And I thought, that's weird. And so I started reading the book as I'm going, and I discovered that all of my edits were still in the book. Things I'd taken out, things I'd added. Somehow an edit copy had gone to print instead of a finish copy. So,
oh, no.
Yeah, I wound up having to throw away quite a few copies of my book, and there are still folks out there who may have gotten their hands on one of these screwed up copies. So I'm still in the process of trying to track people down, saying, if you get a bad copy, let me know, and I will give you a better copy, because I don't like putting out trash like that. But I was more surprised than anybody when I saw those edit marks. It's like, I even asked another writer, well, what the heck is this? And when he explained it to me, I was like, you're kidding. That's the book that they put out? Well, it's the book I put out. Noe Torres, who's a writer who has numerous books out on UFOs, and I got lucky enough to actually be able to talk to the guy on several occasions. He does the Edinburgh UFO conference So he's the man to talk to.
We might end up having to get him on later. See, Cryptid Connection is not just about Bigfoot. It's about any and all cryptids, including aliens and paranormal events.
That's right. It's paranormal and aliens and cryptids. So everybody kind of has its own home within this. So
yes, it's a happening location. I like going there when I get a chance and taking a look because there's new stuff popping up all the time.
Well, we appreciate that. It's still in its beginning stages and everything else, and so but you have been a good, solid contributor. We do appreciate that.
So if anybody out there listening wants to give us some constructive criticism or suggestions, we'd be glad to listen.
That's right. You can put all the hate mail right there on Cryptid Connection, right there by Chris James. No,
because unlike a certain other social media platform, we allow for certain things to go on without putting you in jail.
I noticed there's this bizarre, I don't even know what category to put it in. It's a thought process. You get people that are into Bigfoot, and I've talked to them. And, oh, yes, we're going to go out in the woods, and we're going to look for this 8-foot-tall, hair-covered creature that 90% of the people on the planet don't believe in. But you UFO people, you're all crazy. And then I've talked to UFO researchers who are out in a field staring up at the sky looking for little green men in flying saucers, and they think anybody that looks for ghosts, there's something wrong with those people. And I've had ghost hunters who swear up and down that looking for ghosts is perfectly natural, but anybody out in the woods looking for Bigfoot, there's something wrong with them. And
it's kind of like the triangle effect.
Yeah. It's like, let's face it, we're all doing some rather crazy endeavors. Typical science is not going to take us seriously no matter what happens. If a UFO were to crash in the middle of the city, some people would still manage to believe it is just a weather balloon. A Bigfoot would just be some guy with too much hair who needs a bath. And that ghost that everybody sees, oh, that's just swamp gas. It's just, that's the nature of people. So instead of being so worried about what everybody else is thinking or doing, I say pick a subject and go look into it. Or if you want, go after all three. That's what I do.
I think you summed it up beautifully just now. That makes a lot of sense. Don't be afraid to have an open mind about anything. Learn what you can, and then decide what's interesting to you.
Okay.
In the last couple of years that I've been active in cryptid research and activities and everything else, and I'm still kind of iffy as to what you're supposed to call yourself. I'm a Bigfooter. That's what I am. I freely admit it. There are so many camps. I've noticed. I was active back in the mid to late 90s, and then right around 2001, 2002, I got out of it. I moved from Washington to Texas, and I went about 14, 15 years. And we had life happen. And I had moved to Texas. There's no Bigfoot in Texas. There's no Bigfoot this side of the Rockies. Really, honestly, that was what my thought was. Everybody who saw Bigfoot that was east of the Rockies, they were meth heads.
Yeah,
that was all I was concerned about. I mean, that they were kooky. They're just. And then, ironically enough, what got me sucked back in was I discovered Sasquatch Chronicles. And I started hearing people give these accounts east of the Rockies. And I was listening to it commuting back and forth in my vehicle. And that got my interest started again. And I'm not going to go into it right now, but this is what ultimately got me back into the field. What I have seen between those two periods, the early or mid to late 90s, that 5-year period from 95 to 2000, versus from about 2014 to now, the difference between the community is just, it's massive. Social media has completely just morphed it. there was very little paranormal, or I don't want to use the term woo, but that's the one that most people bounce around. There was very little of that in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was almost entirely flesh and blood. Now it's almost completely opposite. If the flesh and blood is still a majority, I think
they believe that the incidents are more paranormal related versus flesh and blood related. Is
correct.
That what you're trying to say?
Yeah, correct. If flesh and blood is still a majority, it's very much a silent majority, because all the vocal is now with the paranormal aspects of it, and it really has just changed the whole nature of Bigfoot, and it's fractured the community. It has polarized it. The cryptid community in general has become kind of like politics. It's very hard. You get the conservatives and the liberals.
Yes.
Well, you've got the paranormal and you've got the flesh and blood groups. They just don't play well together. And that, as much as anything else, that was one of my goals that I wanted to do when we created this website. Was we wanted to give a single unified location where both could coexist and in a controlled interaction have an exchange of ideas, but they weren't forced together. It was just like, on Facebook, you can control and create your own groups, and they can be public or private or even secret. We have the same ability on Cryptid Connection, except you don't have the big brother aspect. We're not tracking you. We're really not even, what's the word I'm looking for?
Controlling?
Thank you. That's still not it exactly, but that's
close enough.
That's the idea. There's
We're not looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, we're not
laughing at your opinions and your ideas.
Minus a few very basic filters that we have built in. We don't want anything obscene or anything like that. Your groups are secret, and they're in with yourself, and you can control who's in them and who's not in them and everything else, and you can control whether they're public, private, or secret. But the thing is, you can't get
your ideas.
Minus a few very basic filters that we have built in. We don't want anything obscene or anything like that. Your groups are secret, and they're in with yourself, and you can control who's in them and who's not in them and everything else, and you can control whether they're public, private, or secret. But the thing is, you can't get that with Facebook. Here, you
can't get that with the other social media.
I'm sorry, but you're right. You're right. You can't get that with the other social media. However, I'm almost tempted to say that the other social media is they've reached the point where it's like saying that red colored soft drink that everyone loves because it's the real thing. I mean, if you guys are really going to nail me on this, it's going to be hard not to do with any name brand.
Well, let me put it this way: like people who are on the fence between flesh and blood or paranormal, they have more of a comfort level.
Yes, they do.
Within this group that we have created.
That is very true, and they can control where they go back and forth between the two. And we also have set up to where anybody who wants to promote an idea or a theory or announce a finding, or whatever gets to them, they can create their own blog entry that can then be shared within the community. It's not going to be public. It's not going to be accessible on the internet as a whole. It won't be search engined or anything like that, but it will be within the community. Someone could look it up. And so, and then those are open to comments. And the entire idea behind this is so that way we have a somewhat limited ability of peer review that is brought in to encourage the debate and everything else. Now that moderated was the term I was looking for before.
Yes.
We're not heavily moderating. That being said, I'm not going to let people murder each other. on our website.
But you're allowing everybody to share
They can
ideas.
have separate ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I had two very specific people in mind when I was going to create this as two extremes. I had on one end of the ultra-conservative side, the ultra flesh and blood, very skeptical. I had Stephen Streufert. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he does Bigfoot books or whatever out of Willow Creek, California. And then on the other side, I had Christopher Noel, who does, he's out of, I want to say it's Maine or is it Vermont? I can't remember. He's out of New England. But anyway, he's very much right now into Bigfoot structures and things like this. And we've gone from someone who is extraordinarily evidence-only, physical-based, just, we're not even sure these things exist, to the opposite of extreme of not only do they exist,
they have a community, they have a lifestyle.
Exactly. And I wanted a place where these two could get together without killing each other. Well, they have their own corners.
You've heard the story about the four horsemen of Bigfooting, how they spent most of their time talking bad about each other instead of actually looking for Bigfoot.
This is very true. And they did. I mean, now, to be perfectly honest, Renee and Grover, they kind of brought it on each other. Their personalities were just kind of built for that kind of a conflict.
But the thing is, we're speaking of Bigfoot. It's not only about Bigfoot.
No,
we are expanding as daily. We're adding different sections.
Right. There is a cryptid influence here only because that is our actual background, and so that's where the starting point was. But we realized real quick, well, if the cryptid community could benefit from something like this, then the paranormal and then the UFO could also as well. Because part of the deal is everybody is part of their own groups. We're fragmented across all three branches here. You've got this group over here, you've got this group over there, and normally they don't ever interact. And if you're a newbie, you just came in, you're interested, you may go and you like Group A, you really like what you're reading. So you start attending some of their stuff. Maybe you follow their discussion groups, but you know what? You never really get your foot in the door. You're always an outsider because that Group A has already become its own private social club, and that's really all it is. It's a group of close friends at that point, and it's very difficult to get in. Same thing with Group B over here. There is no home for that newbie to go where he may interact with people from A and B. And that's the thing. With our site and everything, we're wanting and we're inviting people from Group A and Group B and everything else to come in, but it's separate from their group. They can come in and their group can have a presence, but their group is accessible on our page. And so, and everything. Now, they have private portions that are there, but at the same time, the newbies can sit there and they can read all about them and they can find out, hey, let me contact them when I can't and everything else. One thing we're doing that... Hold on one second.
That's 3 everything else as you've said in the last 2 minutes.
I love you, dear. I will I will try to do this. Chris, you can keep that in. That's okay. This is just our dynamic.
Apologies.
I do very little editing when I'm doing a podcast, simply because I already put 10 hours into each show just in research. By the time I record the show, that's 11 hours. I don't make any money doing a podcast, so I'm not going to be doing a 40-hour work week just trying to talk to a bunch of people about crazy things, strange things.
I can understand that entirely. I really can.
I did have to do some major editing when I interviewed Ken Gerhardt the second time, the time it actually recorded. And he told me right at the very beginning his cell phone was horrible. And so I recorded him, and you could see the wave on the voice monitor. When I would speak, I was getting a good signal. When he would talk, he was getting about 50%. So I had to go through, and I had to cut the show. Every time I would speak, every time he would speak. I would speak, he would speak. I had to cut it into little bite-sized pieces. I had to turn his volume all the way up. I had to turn my volume all the way. It took me 4 hours to edit the show to a point where it was listenable. Not that it was good, but it was listenable. And the whole time
That's dedication.
I had that exact experience with the show we just recorded last.
I wouldn't have put that much effort into it if it hadn't been such a nightmare the first time I recorded Ken. I wasn't about to call him up and say, "Hey, dude, can we try this a third time?" But no, that was a horror show and a half. But
you got him 2 times. You recorded it once.
Yes.
And everything's good.
It was still a nightmare. Yeah, it's people out in the community that listen to podcasts. They're like, "Oh, your podcast sounds horrible. The volume was this, that, and the other, and your music was and they don't stop to think we're not making any money doing this. We're putting a couple $100 worth of equipment on a desktop. We're sitting down. We're doing all this research. We're talking to people, and we're letting them listen for free, and they get upset about it. It's like,
isn't that amusing? Not really.
No. Kyle Filson. I don't know if he meant to send me a text or not, but we got to texting back and forth. He's from Expanded Perspectives. They're out of, I can't think of the name of the town right now. Super good podcast. They talk about everything on the planet as well, but we got to going back and forth about, you put so many hours into your show, and the next thing you know, some guy's talking bad about it, and it's like, what can you do? But that's the world we live in, unfortunately.
You got to take the good with the bad.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very much so.
Unfortunately, a lot more bad seems to make it onto the page than the good.
Tell me something.
Yes.
Where do you get your topics?
Just really off the top of my head. I'll sit here on a weekend, watch a few TV shows, mysteries and monsters and mysteries in America sometimes, ancient aliens, just whatever just happens to be on. I'll be sitting there watching the show and a thought will pop into my head. That one little tidbit might make a good show. They were talking about people vanishing mysteriously one time. I don't remember. I think it was Monsters and Mysteries they had David Paulides. And the next thing I know, I'm hammering out a show on mysterious vanishings. It's whatever strikes my interest at the particular moment.
Well, so far so good.
When I first started the show back in 2016, after Arturo conned me into doing it, I thought maybe I'm going to do 6 or 8 shows and that's going to be the end of it. And that was 150 shows ago. And even I have a really bad tendency as I'm sitting in front of the microphone doing a show, suddenly I'm thinking, ooh, I should do a show about some other little item that I just heard about. So I'm trying to take notes, talk, think at the same time. That's not a good way to doing things, but, well, that's me. I can actually try to write a book while driving a vehicle.
One of those multitasking, always busy types.
But I'm not good at doing 2 things at once.
Yeah, it's my problem. I can't. I'm a single-minded person. I focus on this, and this is it. And the house could burn down around me. But, you have to get my attention.
Speaking of the book once more, I like talking about the book because it's my book. And when I first wrote it, I put in just a blank statement. We don't have Bigfoot near Laredo. And I had interviewed Craig Woolheater from the Texas Bigfoot Research Center. And I just asked him, why do you suppose we don't have Bigfoot sightings in Laredo? Too hot, too dry, not enough trees. Simple formula, really, because look at the areas where you see Bigfoot reports. Big trees, lots of water, cool climates. And that was the thought process for the entire LPRS for about the next couple of years until I got to talking to Joe Rogerio, who had a Bigfoot sighting on Highway 359, halfway between Freer and Laredo. 59, halfway between Freer and Laredo. He saw Bigfoot on the side of the road. And if you look at the area, there are no trees. There's hardly any water out there except that 1 week out of the year when it rains like mad. And yet he saw a 8-foot tall, hair-covered creature standing on the side of the road, 2 o'clock in the morning, middle of nowhere, and it was stalking a couple of deer as he drove by.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been the flesh and blood Bigfoot camp. I've never fit in with their thought process. I have always been the trans-dimensional kind of person, thinking that Bigfoot comes and goes as it wants, is simply because nothing else explains the ability. Somebody's following Bigfoot tracks and all of a sudden they just disappear. Somebody sees Bigfoot in a location and then it's gone, vanished in a blink of an eye.
It does produce a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you that.
To have a Bigfoot sighting halfway between Freer and Laredo, there's no explanation for it. There have also been Bigfoot sightings at Lake Alice, which, once again, there are no big trees around there. There are trees around the lake simply because there's a water source. But if you look at the Lake Alice from a satellite, it's farm fields for miles in every direction. Bigfoot would have to get down on his hands and knees and crawl through a bar ditch in order to get from one place to another without being seen, unless he is somehow coming and going through other means, which makes it a trans-dimensional.
I think you don't do that. Don't do what you're doing.
Did you hear that just now?
Hear what?
Oh, thank goodness.
My husband's being an incompetent person.
No, I don't know why, but I had opened up. I'm looking up on Google right now. Hold on. I'm looking up on Google Maps. I want to look up Lake Alice.
I'm sorry, Chris, if you'll continue your story.
Yes, please go ahead.
Well, Lake Alice, or Alice Lake, is just about 3 miles north of the city of Alice. Alice is it's about 2/3 of the way between Laredo and Corpus Christi. It's a little bitty town, lots of history in the area. The Headless Horseman of Texas, that's supposedly his last resting area, is just south of Alice in a little town called Ben Bolt. And people think Headless Horseman, they think Sleepy Hollow, up north, cold country, people with tricorn hats, and they don't realize that there was a Headless Horseman in Texas.
I was going to say, I've been to Sleepy Hollow, and I actually used to live up near there, so I had no idea there was a Headless Horseman of Texas. That's intriguing. I'm going to look that up later.
Chris?
Back. Yes.
I'm going to disagree with you.
On which?
On Lake Alice.
Oh.
I'm looking at satellite imagery of Lake Alice. I can see perfectly well why there could be Bigfoot sightings there. And I'll tell you why. You have a fully functional waterway system that is going across those farm fields that is wooded, has continuous cover.
It's not
many miles.
It's not
north.
wooded like you'd find up around Jefferson, though. We've got a mesquite.
No, not at all. It's going to. When I say wooded, I'm thinking a West Texas wooded. This is going to be cedar. This is going to be scrub oak, and probably not more than 12 feet tall at its highest.
How about 6 feet tall?
6 feet?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. That's really bad.
See, we actually hit a lake a couple of weeks ago, and the vegetation was surprising for having heard there was a sighting there as well. So I can get on your boat there.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the satellite image, and I'm wondering, I don't know if there's enough cover myself.
It looks a lot better from above than it does when you're standing on the ground looking at it.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's it. You guys have got me going to Street View.
Well, now, hold on. I think I'm going to change the subject here a little bit, if
Go
I
ahead.
may.
You may.
Chris, were you finished with your topic?
Yeah,
I know you don't edit a lot, and I don't want to bother.
No, that's perfectly fine.
I apologize. Okay, so I have a little game that I like to play with our guests. It's called the Quick Cryptid Connection Query. And I'm going to name off a series of cryptids. And if you believe or have a theory that they might exist in some form, I want you to say yay. If you do not believe that they exist and that they are only a myth, I want you to say nay. If you have never heard of this said cryptid, I would like you to say what? How does that sound?
Do I have to use those words in particular?
No, sir, you do not.
Just their meanings.
Yes. Attack.
Okay. Let's start with the Baku.
Baku. I have not heard of that one.
Cali Greyhound.
Nope, haven't heard of it.
Cerberus.
Cerberus I've heard of. The multi-headed dog. He had 3 heads, and he guarded the pits to Hades.
Dragon.
Dragons? There's got to be something to dragons. China and Japan, England, they talk about them in their history all the time. There's got to be something to them. I just don't think they're around anymore.
Fair enough. Satyr.
A satyr. That's like a half man, half goat, which was the original image used by the church to describe Satan because they wanted people to stop worshiping Pan as an entity, but it's possible. Goat Man. He's been sighted all over the area along the Sabine River and the Poplik Bridge. They have a goat man that hangs out under there.
We actually have a goat man that is sighted just south of where we live in Abilene. Probably about 25 miles, 30 miles south.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have that lake that we were just talking about that's in that same region.
Mm-hmm.
That we heard the one Sasquatch report on, and then when we were there, we actually ran across someone who said that was number 5 they have now heard in the last 2 years. So we have 5 there.
Dang.
We have 5 Sasquatch plus 1 goat man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No biggie.
Chupacabra.
Chupacabras, yes. The blue dog, the one that we have here in Texas, I don't think is related to the creature that was reported in Puerto Rico. And what a lot of people don't realize, back in 1936, I believe, there was a creature running around southern Arkansas that they referred to as the killer kangaroo. It would hop like a kangaroo. It was kind of shaped like a kangaroo. It had little bitty bat wings in the middle of its shoulders. It would suck all the blood out of small animals, calves, goats, dogs. The people of the town chased it with shotguns and rifles. It fled south from the southern part of Arkansas. They've never seen it again. Like I said, that was back in 1935 or 36, I believe. So that looked a lot more like the chupacabras from Puerto Rico and not the blue dog that people are reporting here in Texas.
How about the jackalope?
The jackalope is something you find in truck stops that tourists buy to take back to the northern part of the country and show people that don't know anything about nature.
I have some hidden gems in here. How about the Kirin?
Kirin. I don't know what the Kirin is.
How about the Lamassu?
Lamassu. Is that from the Philippines?
Yes, sir.
I have heard of it, but I couldn't say one way or another simply because I've never actually looked into it.
How about the devil bird? The devil bird, or the lumama?
Lumama, that also sounds like something from the other side of the planet. Giant bird that preys on people out in the jungles.
Mm-hmm. How about the Patagonia alien?
I have never heard of the Patagonian alien unless that's that one that they named, I can't think. The little tiny body that they found in a cave, was that it?
I believe that was.
Okay, yes, I have heard of it. And of course, naturally, the body can no longer be found anymore. Somebody has spirited it away, and then they claimed it was something other. But it's probably real, but we'll never get an answer from the mainstream science on it.
How about a unicorn?
The unicorn. Would you believe that the first reports of the unicorn were coming out of India? The ancient Greeks used to refer to the unicorn as a animal living in the Indus Valley. It had one horn, but it didn't look like a horse with a spiral horn sticking out of its forehead. It looked a little bit more like a skinny rhinoceros, I think. But the original reports of the unicorn were out of India.
Last but not least, how about the werewolf?
Werewolves have got to be real. The thing is, are they people that turn into a wolf, or are they people that turn into something that's half man and half wolf? It's you've got the dog man sightings all over the country now. You've got, is it a dog man or is it a werewolf? What's the difference? They say it looked like a dog. Well, let's face it, a dog kind of looks like a wolf. Except my dog, he looks like a Shih Tzu because he is. But that would make a horrible monster, a giant Shih Tzu. But
that would be very scary.
Especially the way he eats. But there's got to be something to all of these stories that have been spread throughout Europe and throughout the United States here recently. And the idea of a person being able to take on an animal's form, it's not solely to European folks. The Indians had the skinwalker, which was able to take on the form of an animal. It could be anything, coyote, wolf, whatever the person chose to take on the form of. So simply being a werewolf, perhaps it could be whatever particular creature a human can transform into. And whether or not people can do this or not, I tend to believe that it's possible more than not. Simply because there are so many reports of these creatures that people have seen, and it's not just coming out of one little spot on the planet, it's coming out from all over the place. So yeah, I do believe that there could be something like a werewolf out there.
That's where I'm going with this. There's actually a hidden gem in there. It is the devil bird, or the lumama. It's a frightening horned bird of Sri Lankan folklore. It's an elusive creature that is rarely seen, but is often heard of in the form of its infamous blood-curdling screams. Its cries are said to resemble a wailing woman, and it's perceived by locals as an omen of death. For centuries, the nocturnal cries of the devil bird were the only evidence of its existence. Western science wrote it off as a mere superstition. However, in 2001, the devil bird was identified as a new species of owl.
Dang.
It's the spot-bellied eagle owl. So cryptids can come out as real creatures.
It's going to be an interesting day when somebody actually finds a Bigfoot, either alive or dead, either way. Modern mainstream science is going to waltz in and say, okay, we'll take over for this now. You strange people go away. And then everybody's going to have to find something else to go look for.
Oh, that's very true. There's absolutely no way that any of us armchair investigators are going to get the time of day if someone actually brings in evidence or a body that proves conclusively. We don't have the credentials. We don't have the background. It doesn't matter what kind of evidence or documentation we have gotten, because we haven't proved it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's proved, okay, now real scientists are going to have to go in and they're going to have to learn everything all over again that we may already know. I actually got into this argument one time, not that long ago, with someone who fancies themselves a pretty decent researcher and somewhat of a prolific author, still in a kind of a niche area, though, if you ask me, in Bigfoot. But they were making such broad claims about everything. We were talking about stick structures and their interpretations and their meanings and what they mean and everything else. And we just, it just went back to this person was on the thing that he's like, well, when it's finally proven, they're going to have to come to me and I'll be able to tell them all of it. And I was arguing with him, saying, no, that's not going to work, because they're going to argue that the very first thing you had to do was, in order to know all this knowledge, you had to have first established the actual existence of Bigfoot. And since you have not done that, you've essentially put the cart before the horse.
Yep.
And that makes everything you say, therefore, hypothetical. And they're going to have to go over and redo every single step you did just to verify. I mean, even if they had proven, that's the first thing you do when you look at any theory or anything else, is someone else goes along and they reproduce it. Once it's reproducible, then it's true. And he did not like, it was, we just agreed to have different opinions ultimately. But that's just the nature of the beast. And you're right. Once they prove, mainstream scientists is going to come in here and not give anyone the time of day. I think you're right about that.
I would be.
Which brings.
I would be very much. I'd be very much.
Another question.
Yes.
What do you think is better, that it's conclusively proved, or that it's not?
It's the exact same way as I feel about Oak Island. Every time I watch an episode of Oak Island, I pray that Marty and his brother will find the treasure, and that they won't find the treasure. Because no matter what they pull out of the ground, it's not going to be enough. If they drag the Ark of the Covenant out of that hole, it's still going to be, is that it? Is that the whole treasure? You
don't want to see mystery end at all, do you?
No. I've been looking into the Oak Island treasure. Yeah, you can even call it a treasure. We don't know. The Oak Island money pit. It's a money pit because people keep throwing money into it, and they're not getting anything back out. I've been following that thing for 30, 40 years, and if it gets proven one way or another tomorrow, it's not going to be enough. I don't want Bigfoot to ever be proven to be real or fake. The mystery of a large creature running around out in the woods like that makes life exciting, makes it interesting. If all the mysteries on the planet were proven tomorrow, what the heck would we do? We'd have to find new mysteries to go looking for.
Very much so.
Astutely said.
Hopefully, that makes sense to some people.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. There are, however, those of us out there who've been scared out of our campgrounds, who have had those experiences. And, I differ with some of them, because everybody calls themselves a knower that knows that. And I'm still a little bit, I'm a little bit on the fence with that, because we got scared of that campground, but it wasn't me who saw it. It was my wife at the time. And I had to extricate her from the situation.
Yikes.
Is what happened. So I dealt with the immediate repercussions of it. And but I can tell you from that, I'm 99% sure there was something there, and that something, it was on two legs and it was big and hairy. So I'm stuck in this middle ground. I've been so close, but I haven't had it walk up and shake my hand yet. And because I'm just skeptical enough of a person, I can't make that leap until, it decides to rip my arm off. And that's probably what's going to end up happening to me at some point.
Well, me and my wife both saw a ghost. We know it was a ghost because of the way it disappeared into nowhere. And yet, I will look at 99% of the ghost evidence and go, that's not evidence. It's not good enough. I believe in ghosts. I've seen one, but still, I haven't seen any proof that they're out there, other than actually seeing one. But it's like a unexplainable situation. I believe in ghosts, but I don't believe most people who say they have a ghost. It's just one of those weird things.
That makes perfect sense, actually.
The paranormal hunt is the fun of the whole thing.
Oh, yes.
Whether or not the outcome is that you produce the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about learning for yourself.
So what's that guy that buried that treasure out in Arizona? I think his name is Fenn, and people are following the clues, and it gets them out there in the wild, and they go hiking and camping and hunting, and I think they would be pretty much disappointed if somebody were to find the treasure and say, "Oh, here it is." What I really get a kick out of, though, are the people that write books on how to find the treasure. It's like, if they know how to find the treasure, what are they doing writing a book about it?
Well, that's what they've done. They found that treasure. They're cashing it in book sales.
I don't think the treasure's been found.
No. I'm saying that their interpretation of the treasure is the book sales. I guess that's what I should be saying.
Well, there's that other one, the book, The Adventure, I think it's called, where the guy went around and he buried these plexiglass boxes all over the country, and you have to look at these paintings and interpret them, and then you have to go and find the buried treasure in these locations. And I remember seeing the book on the shelf way back when I was younger, and it's like, neat pictures, but I wasn't going to buy a copy of the book. And God, I forget what those things are selling for today, $300-400 a piece or something.
Wouldn't you know it?
Mm-hmm. And don't bother buying the reprints because they say that the artwork in them is horrible. Yeah, well, the world
This is going to be the story with your reprints, with those particular, the edit copies that got out.
I hope
they're
so.
going to be $400. Think about that.
Who was it? John Kirk wrote a book called I think it was The Search for the Caborosaurus, I believe. And it was currently out of print. You couldn't buy it. And I was talking to John one time up in Jefferson. He's the guy from Canada. Big, tall guy with black curly hair. And he just mentioned that he had the book out. And so I sat down with my phone and I quick looked to see if I could find a copy of it. And there was a copy being sold for, I think, it was $3,800. And so I ran up and I showed him the advertisement for it. And he's like, holy cow. He said he would never see a dime of that money, but somebody out there had a copy of his book, and they were trying to sell it for $3,800.
Good gracious.
I got a copy for $12, but the scary part is somebody's going to accidentally click on that button by mistake, and their bank account's going to be sadly pilfered. It is funny what some people will sell other people's work for, though. Dang.
It is.
It's quite interesting. Very very much so.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, Chris.
Yes.
How would you say that your interest in the paranormal, because you've had this long before you started your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
How has it shaped your life? How did you incorporate it?
It got me to looking at the world as a different place than most people. People get up in the morning, they go to work, they earn money, they come home, they pay their bills, they go to bed, they get up the next day, they go do it again. They don't really look all that happy. I get up, even when I was working for a living, before I retired, I would go out and I would look around at the world around me and I would wonder what's out there that I'm not seeing, that I'm not noticing. It just made the world a much more interesting place to be.
I like that answer. That's a good one.
That's a very good answer.
It's like we would be sitting in a location on the river, and you hear a grunting noise. Sounds like two logs rubbing together, and you wonder, I wonder what that could be. What's making that sound? Is it something in the water? Is it something? I had no idea there are alligators in our river down here.
Oh my!
Yes, some rather big ones too. And all the nights that I spent sitting on the banks of the river, and all the people that I've seen swim across that thing, and nobody's gotten bit yet, that as far as we know. But yeah, there apparently are a few alligators in the Rio Grande around Laredo. They've been spotted by people that know what an alligator looks like. We've also
I had no idea. That's interesting.
We've also
I didn't think they were that far west.
We've had some other bizarre creatures. We've had mountain lions spotted all over the place out here. And according to the experts, there are no mountain lions east of Highway 35. And yet, 2 of my personal sightings were far east from Highway 35.
You mean west of 35?
No, east. There are mountain lions west of 35, but they say there are none east.
Oh, okay.
And I've seen 2 on the east side of Highway 35. I've talked to Chester Moore about it a few occasions, and he's like, yeah, the mountain lions know they're not supposed to cross that line. Of course, he's just joking about it. There's somebody y'all need to talk to.
He's on the list.
Good.
He's on the list. Chester is definitely on the list.
Quite a character. We've had other creatures, regular animals sighted in and around Laredo that the folks in charge say shouldn't be in this area, but I guess the animals don't know they're not supposed to be around here. I'm hearing rumors that they're seeing jaguar in our neck of the woods.
Now I've been hearing jaguarundi because that goes into the black cat
Yes.
and everything else as well.
Yes, we've had jaguarundi spotted here in Laredo, and I mean in Laredo. But
right.
They've got some game cameras where they're actually seeing jaguar. You know, those great big nasty things from South America that eat people. Apparently they're starting to show up in our neck of the woods, but the folks in charge say they're not supposed to be here.
Well, it's the whole thing about people are moving into the cities more, emptying the countrysides. We're leaving the rural area to become more rural, and everything is exploding with farming and agriculture and everything else. The ecosystems are just booming. There's more food and therefore and less pressure. So everything's gone up, and you're seeing all of these different species coming up. You know, I mean, this is why we have hogs and deer just about under every foot that you step on.
Yes.
I mean, it's just right there.
Yes. I have seen quite a few deer down in sections of Laredo where you would not expect to see large hooved animals with horns running around. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's the animals don't know they're not supposed to be there.
No, they don't. We, in fact, just related to that, just what was it, yesterday? We were driving through a neighborhood here in Abilene, and I mean, we're talking fairly close to the center of town where we were at, and there was this full-size buck standing right in someone's driveway that has drove down, and I mean, there wasn't...
5 years ago, that wouldn't have been...
Yeah. This animal is 4 or 5, well, maybe 3 to 4 miles from the outer edges of the city. It really is towards the center of the city, and it's just standing there, just watching. Watched us drive by, and it's just like, and we're getting reports all the time now of cats and coyotes, and we even had a bunch of hogs run across one of our main drags the other day. Near the shopping center and everything. Actually, I'd say the other day. It was last year. But, it was like 30 or 40 hogs just right across one morning.
It made the news.
Yeah, it made the news. Everybody was amused by it, but yeah, everything just in general. And I mean, this is a trend that's going across the entire country for the most part. Nature is encroaching on the towns now. We don't have as many hunters. We don't have there's not enough pressure on the system anymore. There is an overabundance of cover, things like that, and everything has just exploded. And so nature is starting to come back to us. And all these urbanite kids who've grown up in the, playing the Xbox and everything else, they just don't know what to do.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting and scary when they start running the country. Oh, wait, I think they already are, but...
They are.
Like somebody...
welcome to it. We're already in the frightening and scary part there.
Like somebody
Sad
said...
fact.
Us old people are going to use cursive writing as a new code so they don't know what we're writing, and we're going to put standard transmissions on all the cars so they can't drive.
I like that. That when I first heard that they had dropped cursive, our daughter was probably one of the last that was taught it in our school system. And they killed it not long after she made, I think, 8th grade.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, and so our little boy now, he's not going to learn it unless we teach him ourselves. That is just so weird.
They won't be able to read any of the documents from way back when.
Yeah, no one's going to be able to read the history. They're going to have to rely on a translated copy that puts it into type.
Or it'll be a new career choice. You can go to college and learn how to read cursive.
Yes, this is true. We need to just get frozen for 200 years, and then we're going to thaw out, and we have instant careers. We'd be able to be great archaeologists, and we can interpret all this. Oh, my goodness.
Well, it looks like we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, according to my clock.
We ought to have something. Yeah, we ought to have something useful here.
Well, like I said, I don't like editing, so I might just chop out a few little blurbs in the middle and just run it as it is.
That's fine. I'm thinking we're probably right along the same lines. Do you have any questions before we let you go?
The website, the name of it that y'all have?
Yes.
If you could...
It is Cryptid Connection.
Give him the actual address.
Yes.
It's https.
https.
:// Cryptid Connection.
CryptidConnection.
Yikes. Hopefully somebody will hear that and they'll say, ooh, I got to check that out.
Now, I want to say that this is important. There's something I want to say about the website before we get off. Part of the website is designed for security and for privacy. This is very, very much a exclusive club type situation that we're putting in. Specifically because on other parts of social media, people get followed, they get hassled. You'll get trolls, things like that. So we've got a few things that are in place that are designed primarily to stop that. One of them is that the website is subscription based. It's very low. It is at $5 a month. That being said, if you're not invested enough to where you can spend $5 a month, then you're probably not interested enough in the topic to really want to deal with the website. The reason why we're doing this is because it's a filter. We're honestly trying to say, hey, if you're really into this, this is what this is where you can go. Now there is additional options. We try to verify you. We have an option where you can actually go with us and we can verify you and make you a verified member. And what that does is that literally we have gone through, verified you're a real human. You're not posing under a separate identity or anything else. You're known to the site. You get an endorsement on your membership if you are known, and once you go through this.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the other members can use that and know essentially we're dealing with the same person. Another reason why it's subscription based and everything else is because we can verify subscriptions. Most people aren't going to go through the trouble of taking multiple subscriptions out just to have multiple identities.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to do that. But, people on a free network that we won't mention, they do it all the time. And so we're trying to give that security and that option. Something like that does cost money and time. And that's the other reason why I say, hey, it is a subscription. We've got to be it's got to be self-supporting to an extent. It's not a whole lot, but it does have to.
But not only do you get your blogs and your groups that you can follow and post things, there are several other features that we have on the website, such as our Cook's Corner, which is an interesting little side project of mine. It's a submit your own camp favorite recipe. Say if you like to go in ufology, you go camping, you can go on this website and pick some new different recipes for your campsite.
This is your favorite way of heating up a can of Denny Moore.
Or we have our resource library that we have added.
Yes, that's still growing, but that's user submitted also as well. As people have their resources online for various things. As far as like cryptology or cryptozoology goes, we've got like the Macaulay Library of Sound, and we've got one of Jeff Meldrum's he's got a journal that they publish, I think, every 6 months that's online. We've got several different websites and everything, and it's still growing as people submit them. And the whole idea is we have a central repository, we're building it, and people can come in, and these are actual, these aren't just so-and-so's website. These are the actual links to take you to this university or to, this museum site, something like that.
Something more professional.
Yeah, these are going to be actually accredited sites. That's a requirement on that. The one that I am the most proud of, though, actually, ironically enough, is what we call the Podcast Alley. And we actually are carrying you on this. Yes. Your show is one of them. And what we've done is we just take the various podcasts that are topic related.
Topic centric.
Yeah, they're central to the topic. And if they're publicly available, we're just importing their RSS feeds. And so you can go to the main page and you'll see a list of 20 or 30 different podcasts. And we've got them broken up by different main topics. And you can click on each one, and those are live updated every hour. So that way you can go and see not just the newest, latest version that has been released publicly, but you can see all the catalog that exists, so you can go back and you can read the descriptions and everything else. And it's just giving a central browsing point. Because actually, when you click on the actual podcast to listen to it, it's going to route to whoever actually hosts that podcast and everything. So we're not taking away from those podcasts or anything like that. All we're doing is we're giving you the place to look at everything at one time and to be able to make an informed opinion and everything. That's been a lot. I mean, I have been amazed at how often I have caught myself using it, and we're still adding podcasts to it as they come along and everything, but it's still kind of handy. And again, that's right there. That's only for members, but it's something you have. Another thing we have is, and it hasn't taken off too well yet, but I think that's only because not many people know about it. We have the swap shop, and the idea behind that is it's just an online flea market for members to coordinate with each other. Say you've got someone who's got a night vision goggles that they want to sell because they're upgrading to a new one, or whatever. It gives you a place where you can do it, and you have a like-minded audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're more likely here than, say, throwing it up on Craigslist or eBay. You'll probably get a much more fair price here. We don't regulate that. We ask that you respect a few basic rules, no firearms, nothing that is restricted or anything like that. But other than that, if you want to sell your mixer or your 1972 Dodge or Ford Pinto,
or your old Coleman camp stove,
whatever. It's for the members. They can do what they want and everything. But again, it's all private. It is not visible on the internet. It's not going to come up on a search engine. We're not running advertisements. We don't want everything you do. It seems like everything you go online, everything is ad supported.
Pop up here, pop up there.
How is it that you go, you look something up, or you discuss something in a group, and a certain topic comes up? 30 minutes later, you're doing something totally different, and you have
a different website.
On a different website, but your topic or whatever you mentioned is popping up right there in an ad. That's a certain amount of just privacy that is invaded.
Violation.
It's violation. It really is. Most of us have accepted it. It's the price of doing business. This is what we want and everything else. Honestly, I'm an HBO guy. I prefer my stuff without the advertising. That's just how I wanted, and that's how I always want everything. I hate Hulu. As a side note, just to give you an insight into my brain, I have Netflix, I have Amazon. I really don't want to have Hulu. I have Hulu because my daughter insisted on it. But the thing is with Hulu, their basic charge of like $7 or $8 a month still has commercials in it. And that really rubs me raw. Netflix, Amazon, all of them, HBO, no commercials as their standard price. If and that's always the way I've been. It's like, if I'm going to pay for it, I don't want commercials. If I have commercials, I don't want to pay for it because my time is already paying for it.
Do you remember when they started putting little advertisements in books?
Vaguely, yeah.
You'd buy a book and you'd be thumbing through it, reading it, and you'd get right about to the middle, and there'd be like 2 or 3 color ads.
There would be, there are. You're right. I don't see it all the time, but I have seen that.
Out comes the knife. Cut them out. Throw them away. I wouldn't even look at them. I hated that.
Oh, I tell you what. It's just, I can get them advertising a show on their own network. And it's like HBO. You sit there, you're going to watch Game of Thrones, and here comes a little 1-minute commercial for Westworld or something like that. That I can understand. That's acceptable. It's still topic-centric to what I'm doing.
Yes.
But it's within the HBO thing. That's what I'm wanting to do with Cryptid Connection. I'm wanting to make it HBO for the paranormal community. I don't want to have anything else. I don't want to have any of this outside stuff. Everyone in the world is trying to monetize in such, that's the name of the game in the world. Everyone has to make their money and everything else. It's just dirty.
Yes. We're all about sharing our information.
Yeah. I just,
that's what Cryptid Connection is about.
I'm not here to make, we're not going to be rich. We don't want to do anything. I would be really happy if this supports our hobby and lets us go in the field like twice a month. That would be awesome.
Fantastic.
If it does that, it pays for the server. We're great. So, but yeah, that's the idea behind the site. The site's origin, and I think this is important to say, the site's actual origin originally came up when we were in the field. What was it, last May? No,
a year and a half ago.
About a year and a half ago, and we had brought a friend out that was, she was female, let's say, and one of my research partners that are out there that came out that time was a confirmed bachelor, and they had hit it off. And it was kind of an instantaneous hit it off too. It was within one weekend. And I remember we were talking around the campfire, and everyone was talking about how odd it was to date with Bigfoot in your life.
Or any paranormal.
Or any paranormal thing. Just what do you do with that bone in your closet?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how is it that you confess to whoever this is? Because 99% of whoever you were going to date would not have been interested.
Yes.
It's just not something that's there. It's not something that you can list on a dating site or anything else. And the very first thought I thought was, we should make a Bigfoot dating site. And then from that, I was like, no, we've got to be bigger than that. We've got to be better. Because then I realized, no, it's not just dating, because people in general can't meet up with each other.
Mm-hmm.
They can't share and coordinate. Everyone's afraid of the internet kind of a thing. And everyone's afraid that they're going to take, you're going to rob and take their site, or that you're going to spoil it. Secrets are all out and everything else. We're getting past that. We're getting past the trolls. We're getting past the lurkers. Who's there is a real person, and we're taking steps to verify that. Now, if they want to join, the first month is free. It is set up that way. So you can go in, you can play with it for a month, cancel that subscription if you want, and you're never going to get billed. The caveat to that is you do have to go ahead and fill out the application, fill out the payment information. We don't deal with that. That's a third-party processor. But by doing that, I left that in there specifically because that is a level of importance to you. That's you taking a step.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'll invest yourself that much, then you're not
the commitment.
Right? Yeah. You're chances are you do not have foul intent. You're not going to go there and troll everyone. That you can go do that on other places, and it's not going to cost you. So, anyway, I hope that made sense to everybody.
Oh, yes.
And
Fantastic.
on our podcast, you're going to hear more about it and everything. There you go. Do you have anything else, Chris? I'm sorry, I just started rambling, but
that's perfectly all right by me, because I do the same thing all the time. That's the nice thing about having your own podcast. You can say darn near anything you want, as long as you're willing.
This is true.
As long as you're willing to put up with the people that will come out and say bad things about you.
Yeah, they can. I've heard it all before. I'm sure I'm going to hear new things too, but heck with it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them to get on the podcast.
Exactly. We're ready for the next great adventure. We don't look back.
I can honestly say we're not armchair people. We actually get out there and we really do it. Those items on the reviews pages and everything else, I write those reviews because I've broken the equipment and I know how good it was. It's that kind of a thing. So.
Well, I'm going to have to run. I think my wife wants to make dinner.
That's fine. You go ahead. We've got to get off too, but it's
Thank
been a
you,
pleasure.
Chris.
I appreciate
Have a
y'all
good
having
night.
me on your show, and I appreciate y'all coming on my show at the same time.
Fair enough. I hope we gave you something you could do for your show, because I feel like you really gave us far more than we gave you.
Absolutely.
Well, I was only getting cranked up, so.
Hey, that's fine.
Part two.
Yeah, I was about to say, I can guarantee you there are part twos on both of our ends and everything else, because we have not even gotten into everything in my field work for the last couple of years, and the whole Bob Garrett saga and everything else. We're all back there. So.
And that was the show, me being interviewed by the Cryptid Connection, and I kind of interviewing them. Unfortunately, we didn't really come to a successful conclusion. They said a few things, I said a few things, and we both kind of mumbled to a stop, and then we both just hit the stop button and ended the recording. So that was the Cryptid Connection interview. Till next Saturday, this is Chris James.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder 3. Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?